I'm Arundel County Sheriff Jim Frederick, and welcome to On the Lookout for February 2020. I also want to welcome you to our new look for 2020. In the next few months, I'll be bringing in some guests to highlight wanted subjects in Annapolis, and we might even have some visits from a few furry friends. This month's episode is packed with subjects who have open warrants for addresses throughout Anne Arundel County, with misdemeanor charges like failing to appear or FTA, and serious felony charges like burglary and robbery. If you recognize a name or a face, call our warrant tip line at 410-LOOKOUT or 410-566-5688. All right, it's time to go on the lookout.
610-38 coming.
From the Northern District, our first subject is Michael Maurice Tillman. He is a 20-year-old African-American male, 6'3", 170 pounds, with brown hair and brown eyes. He is wanted for violation of probation. On November 7th of 2018, Michael Tillman was placed on 3 years probation for violating a protective order. On May 18th of that year, Mr. Tillman incurred criminal charges for assault in the second degree and disorderly conduct. On August 14th and 15th of 2019, he received 2 traffic citations for driving without required license and authorization. Mr. Tillman has been discharged from substance abuse treatment programs twice for his continued use of marijuana, alcohol, and other drugs. Tillman also violated his probation by not attending his weekly reporting requirements. His last known address is 474 Mainview Court in Glen Burnie. Our next subject is Tammy Lynn Willis. She's a 50-year-old Caucasian female, 5'2", 110 pounds, with sandy hair and blue eyes. She is wanted for a violation of probation. On January 11th of 2019, Tammy Willis was placed on 3 years probation for drug charges. Ms. Willis failed to report for intake or contact her agent after being placed on probation. She is also currently on probation for an additional case in April of 2018 and has failed to appear for 3 consecutive violation of probation hearings, resulting in arrest warrants being issued. Her last known address is 1310 Pontiac Avenue in Brooklyn. The next subject is Tina Antoinette Walker. She's a 43-year-old African-American female, 5'5", 180 pounds, with sandy hair and brown eyes. She is wanted for a violation of probation. On May 2nd of 2018, Ms. Walker was placed on probation for misdemeanor theft. As of January 2019, she's failed to provide proof of completion of court-ordered attendance at a victim impact panel, as well as proof of completion of community service. Her last known address is 4113 Rondo Court in Brooklyn. The next subject is Curtis Lamar Wallace. He's a 29-year-old African-American male, 5'2", 125 pounds, with black hair and brown eyes. He is wanted for violation of probation. On December 15th of 2017, Curtis Wallace was placed on probation for assault in the second degree for 5 years. He was ordered to attend and complete an abuser intervention program and complete drug treatment. Mr. Wallace was discharged from the YWCA's abuser intervention program and Project Chesapeake drug treatment for lack of attendance. He has failed to report to his probation agent as ordered and tested positive for illicit drug use. His last known address is 16 West Talbot Street in Brooklyn. The next subject is Lorenzo Antoine Hatter. He's a 31-year-old African-American male, 6 foot, 175 pounds, with brown hair and eyes. He is wanted for violation of probation. On June 1st of 2016, Lorenzo Hatter was paroled or released on charges of burglary in the first degree. In March of 2019, Lorenzo Hatter incurred additional charges for driving a motor vehicle without a required license and authorization. Hatter then failed to appear in court on June 4th of 2019 for the new charge and failed to notify his probation agent of the new charge. Hatter has failed to report to parole and probation since March of 2019 and has not paid his outstanding restitution of $860. Mr. Hatter was discharged from Project Chesapeake Behavioral Health Treatment Facility on January 4th of 2019 due to lack of attendance. His last known address is 231 Woodhill Drive in Glen Burnie.
Sheldon Universe 17 Lord.
From the eastern area of the county, our first wanted subject, Alan Charles Wilson. He's a 51-year-old Caucasian male, 5'5", 180 pounds, with brown hair and brown eyes. He is wanted for forgery, assault in the second degree, theft under $1,500, unauthorized removal of a motor vehicle, and disorderly conduct. In October of 2019, the defendant's brother, who is the victim in the crimes, reported to county police that his work truck had been stolen by Wilson. The victim called his brother and instructed him to meet at his place of employment with the stolen truck. When the defendant arrived, he was intoxicated and yelling at his brother and his brother's girlfriend, and, allegedly, reached into the victim's car and punched him in the face. During this altercation, the victim called police. However, the assault was not reported to them. Once the victim was able to get his truck back, he noticed several items were missing, including a laptop, mobile printer, navigation system, and a business checkbook. On November 2nd of 2019, the victim was notified his brother attempted to cash a check at a liquor store in the amount of $500. However, the check was returned to the business unpaid because it was deemed to have been altered or fictitious. Alan Wilson's last known address is 216 Ullman Road in Pasadena. The next subject is Paul Dennis. He's a 30-year-old Caucasian male, 6 feet tall, 160 pounds, with brown hair and blue eyes. He is wanted for violation of probation, with the original charges being theft under $25,000 and a theft under $1,500. On July 24th of 2019, Paul Dennis was placed on 6 months probation, and he failed to report to his probation officer for 4 scheduled dates. He was instructed by his probation officer to complete a substance abuse treatment program and pay restitution to the court. He failed to do either of these things. His last known address is 7731 Vena Court in Pasadena. Our next subject is Nancy Lee Mahan. She's a 49-year-old Caucasian female, 5'6", 150 pounds, with brown hair and green eyes. She's wanted for theft of a credit card, fraud involving 2 counts of theft under $1,500. On December of 2019, she failed to appear for court after being summoned. Her last known address is 8023 Cuba Drive in Pasadena. Next up is Naima Eileen Mosile Hilliard. She is a 22-year-old African-American female, 5'4", 175 pounds, with brown hair and brown eyes. She is wanted for violation of probation, assault, and also for failing to appear on misdemeanor traffic charges. On March 31st of 2019, county police responded to a home in Arundel for a checked suicidal subject call. Once officers located Ms. Hilliard and attempted to place her in custody, she aggressively kicked an officer with the intention of causing bodily harm. Her last known address is 1179 Hampton Road in Arundel. All right, out of West County, our first subject is Edward B. Addis, Sr. He's a 65-year-old Caucasian male, 5'4", 160 pounds, with brown hair and hazel eyes. He is wanted for unauthorized removal of property. Now, this case is a little older, but remember, your crimes never go away. On March 18th of 2008, Charles Addis filed an unauthorized removal of property charge on Edward Addis, Sr. Mr. Addis took the victim's 1993 maroon handicapped-equipped van to get parts for his truck with her permission. She then tried to contact Mr. Addis to return the vehicle, but she was unable to locate him. The van has not been returned, and his last known address is 7990 Quarterfield Road in Severn. The next subject is Mario Ashkam Cruz. He is a 24-year-old Caucasian male, 5'4", 150 pounds, with black hair and brown eyes. He is wanted for assault in the second degree. On the morning of March 20th, 2018, county police responded to Baltimore Washington Medical Center for a report of domestic violence that occurred at 2216 Commissary Circle in Odenton. When police arrived, they spoke with Jocelyn Coronado Velasquez. She advised that her boyfriend, Mario Cruz, had awakened her and told her to get out of the residence. He grabbed her by the neck and squeezed her throat. She stated she was unconscious for approximately 1 minute. He then grabbed her by the arms and threw her out of the house. He also assaulted her approximately 3 weeks prior to this incident, but she did not report that time. His last known address in this case is 2216 Commissary Circle in Odenton. The next subject is Hanif Rabio Allah. He is a 40-year-old African-American male, 5'6", 180 pounds, with black hair and brown eyes. He is wanted for second-degree assault. In March of 2007, county police were dispatched to 909 Viburnum number 302 in Odenton for a report of a domestic violence. Officers spoke to Stephanie Faye Gentry, who advised her fiancé, Hanif Allah, had been in a physical altercation with her. Gentry stated that Allah exited their shared residence because he was throwing items into the dumpster. Gentry advised that Allah then left the residence to get pizza. She then realized that her shoes and some heirlooms were missing. Ms. Gentry then went outside and checked the dumpster and found her items. When Mr. Allah returned home, she asked him about the items that were thrown out. He became upset and used his body to force Gentry out of the kitchen and into the bedroom. While doing this, he covered her mouth and nose with his hand, making it extremely hard for her to breathe. The suspect and the victim got into another physical struggle over a backpack that Allah appeared to be taking. Ms. Gentry stated that the male subject began to bite her arms. She had visible lacerations on her arm from the bite. Allah dragged Ms. Gentry by her feet toward the bedroom, and she was able to free herself and leave the residence. Gentry stated that Allah assaulted her in the past, and his known address is 909 Viburnum Road, number 302 in Odenton. The next subject is Tariq Nizam. He's a 52-year-old Indian male, 5'11", 192 pounds, with black hair and brown eyes. A warrant has been issued for 2 counts of second-degree assault, malicious destruction of property, and theft less than $1,000. In March of 2016, the county police responded to Shoppers Food Warehouse located at 3441 Laurel Fort Meade Road for a domestic assault that occurred earlier. Upon arrival, the officer met with Ms. Fakhra Tariq, who advised on February 16th of 2016 at her residence, her husband, Mr. Nizam, was pulling Ms. Ayman Tariq's hair because he was upset with her using his cell phone too much. Ms. Tariq is the daughter of Ms. Fakhra Tariq and Mr. Nizam. Ms. Fakhra Tariq advised she attempted to intervene, but Mr. Nizam slapped her in the face and chest. Ms. Ayman Tariq advised that her father took her cell phone and threw it to the ground, destroying it. The cell phone was valued at $300. Ms. Tariq later discovered Mr. Nizam had stolen passports, green cards, and Social Security cards belonging to her and the children. Ms. Tariq believes her husband fled the country since then. The next subject is David Ryan Sargent. He's a 48-year-old Caucasian male, 6 feet tall, 198 pounds, with brown hair and blue eyes. He is wanted for theft under $1,500. In April of 2018, the county police responded to Kohl's, located at 418 George Klaus Boulevard, in reference to a shoplifting. Officers met with the loss prevention officers, who advised that they observed a white male select several pieces of clothing from the store displays and enter into the dressing room. The suspect exited the dressing room without the clothing being visible. Subsequently, clothing bags were located in the dressing room. The suspect walked to the cash register and paid for 1 shirt. He was confronted by one of the loss prevention officers. He became upset and left the store and entered a dark-colored Kia Sedona minivan. It was determined that he had stolen $182 worth of clothing. The suspect has a distinctive scar tattoo on the left side of his neck. A subsequent investigation identified David Ryan Sargent as the person who had stolen the clothing. Sargent's last known address is 8410 Allsworth Court in Fort Meade. From the southern end of the county, our first subject is Arshad Abdullah. He is a 23-year-old African-American male, 5'10", 175 pounds with black hair and brown eyes. He is wanted for possession of a stolen firearm. On December 30th of 2019, police responded to a hotel for a report of a found firearm. The housekeepers found the loaded gun in a hotel room after a customer had checked out. After further investigation, it was discovered that Mr. Abdullah was the customer that had stayed in the room. After a search of the serial number, the gun was identified as stolen. It was also discovered that he is prohibited from owning or using a firearm. His last known address is 47 Bell Court in Annapolis. Next up is John Henry McGowan. He's a 25-year-old African-American male, 5'11", 160 pounds, with brown hair and brown eyes. He is wanted for burglary in the second degree. On November 3rd of 2019, officers responded to a business in Annapolis in reference to a commercial burglary. It was determined that an unknown subject had made entry through an unsecured door and had stolen multiple phones from the business prior to fleeing the scene. A few days later, Mr. McGowan had tried to pawn the items, matching the serial numbers to a GameStop in the area. It was later discovered that Mr. McGowan was a former employee of the business and he had recently been fired for suspicion of theft. His last known address is 300, letter A, Bloomsbury Square in Annapolis. Next up is Kamani Alea Church. She is a 19-year-old African-American female, 5'10", 160 pounds, with brown hair and brown eyes. She is wanted for assault in the second degree, disorderly conduct, fraud, and affray. Affray basically means causing a public disturbance, usually by fighting. On November 12, 2019, officers responded to the Annapolis Mall for a dispute. Upon arrival, officers spoke with 3 females who were in an argument and began a fight inside the food court at the Chick-fil-A. Church was one of the subjects questioned, and it was determined that she intentionally gave incorrect information to the officers to avoid identification. She is now a wanted person, and her last known address is 131 Eastern Avenue in Annapolis. The next subject is Guy Bernard Massey II. He's a 23-year-old African-American male, 5'9", 165 pounds, with black hair and brown eyes. He is wanted for second-degree burglary. On November 19th of 2019, officers responded to an address for a report of a burglary. Upon arrival, officers learned that a shed had been burglarized, from which 2 dirt bikes and a 4-wheeler were stolen. After a thorough investigation, officers learned that Mr. Massey was one of the suspects. Charges were obtained for Massey, and his last known address is 3766 Patuxent Crossover in Davidsonville. The next subject is Kiani Alana Washington. She is a 21-year-old African-American female, 5 foot, 111 pounds, with black hair and brown eyes. She is wanted for theft under $1,000. On August 31st of 2019, Ms. Washington and her friend went to a salon for services. At the end of their visit, Ms. Washington and her friend left the establishment without paying. Her last known address is 23 Benz Drive, Apartment B in Annapolis. All right, it's bonus segment time. Here are a few subjects wanted for failing to pay for their court-ordered child support. First up is Charles D. Alexander. He's a 31-year-old African-American male, 5'9", 185 pounds, with black hair and brown eyes. He is wanted for failure to appear for his court-ordered child support, and Alexander owes $7,500. His last known address is 7746 Rotherton Drive in Hanover. Next subject is Lawrence Edward Coleman III. He's a 41-year-old Caucasian male. He's 5'8", 170 pounds with brown hair and eyes. Apparently, he's skipped on several child support payments because Mr. Coleman's current bond amount is just over $30,000. Wow. His last known address is 112 6th Avenue Northeast in Glen Burnie. Next is Wayman John Cook Jr. He's a 47-year-old Caucasian male, 5'11", 275 pounds, with brown hair and hazel eyes. He is wanted for failure to appear in court and failing to pay his court-ordered child support. Mr. Cook owes outstanding child support to the tune of $7,500. His last known address is 301 Seward Avenue in Brooklyn. The next subject is Anthony Lee Crumpton Sr. He's a 36-year-old African-American male, 6'3", 200 pounds, with brown hair and eyes. He is wanted for failure to appear in court and failing to pay his court-ordered child support as well. Crumpton's current amount is $5,000. His last known address is 2627 Grogan Avenue in Baltimore. Next up is Stephen W. Darby. He's a 37-year-old African-American male, 6'2", 200 pounds, with black hair and brown eyes. He is wanted for failing to pay court-ordered child support as well. Mr. Darby currently owes $6,000, and his last known address is 8543 O'Keefe Drive in Severn. The next subject is Robert Eugene Dennis. He's a 45-year-old Caucasian male, 5'11", 200 pounds, with brown hair and hazel eyes. He is wanted for failure to appear in court and failing to pay his child support. Mr. Dennis's current bond amount is $7,700, and his last known address is 8114 Spalding Circle in Severn. All right, last on our list is Mr. LeVar T. Downs. He's a 37-year-old African-American male, 6 feet tall, 140 pounds, with black hair and brown eyes. He too is wanted for failing to appear in court and failing to pay his child support. Downs currently owes a hefty $15,000 in unpaid support, and his last known address is 225 Letter A, Farragut Court, apartment 102 in Annapolis. Before closing out the show for this month, I want to thank you for watching and for those callers who have provided tips about the subjects we've previously highlighted. If you've had contact with or know the whereabouts of any of the individuals we've covered today, or any others you believe have unserved warrants, please call the warrant tip line at 410-LOOKOUT or 410-566-5688. Thanks for watching, and I look forward to an exciting 2020 working with you to take wanted people off the streets. Until next time, I'm Sheriff Jim Fredericks. Keep your eyes open and stay on the lookout.